Greetings, everyone, and I hope you had a restful Shabbat. Today, February the 6th, 2021. Marcelle and I are thinking about doing a new show on Monday evenings at 8 p.m. called Let's Talk About It. So, in this audio, we talked about it. We talked about the resurrection of the dead and a few other subjects. And I thought the conversation might be interesting to those who have been perplexed about the resurrection of the dead. And here is that conversation. If you like it, join us beginning March 15th, 2021 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope to see you there.
The topic of discussion is to get some clarification on life after death, specifically looking at heaven and what people say about heaven. So in my understanding, when the scriptures talk about heaven, they mean Yahweh's space, and the earth is human space, and that the two have interacted, obviously in Eden and throughout history. And then when Yeshua came, he ushered in the kingdom of the kind of already here, but not quite yet. There's still more to come.
Yeah, did you watch the Flatlands?
I watched part of it. I watched part of it, so I got the idea, but I didn't see the whole thing. So when we get to that dimensional thing, it's still real fuzzy for me. So I'm reading a book called Surprised by Hope.
Who wrote that book? I remember that book.
Yeah, Surprised by Hope, the subtitle, Rethinking, I think, the Resurrection or something like that. It's by Nicholas Thomas Wright.
N.T. Wright, sure.
Yes. So he has some pretty good things in here. So let me start with the first thing that I'm wondering about. So he goes through kind of, I want to come back to this first part later, but basically kind of the precedent and the history of resurrection and life after death in ancient paganism and Judaism. So he goes over that first, and that as far as the ancient pagan world was concerned, that the road to the underworld ran only one way. So I'm quoting some of what he's got here. Mm-hmm. Death was all powerful. One could neither escape it in the first place nor break its power once it had come. Everybody knew there was in fact no answer to death. The ancient pagan world then divided broadly into those who, like Homer's shades, might have wanted a new body, but knew they couldn't have one. And then those, like Plato's philosophers, didn't want one because being a disembodied soul was far better. So in my understanding, kind of what I hear from people that are believers, a lot of their perception of heaven is Platonic.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as, let me skip down here.
In Judaism, people are dead.
Okay, so here's what the ancients spoke of about resurrection, whether to deny it, as all pagans did, or to affirm it, as some Jews did. They were referring to a two-step narrative in which resurrection, meaning new bodily life, would be preceded by an interim period of bodily death. Resurrection wasn't then a dramatic or vivid way of talking about the state people went into immediately after death. It denoted something that might happen, though almost everyone thought it wouldn't, sometime after that. This meaning is constant throughout the ancient world until the post-Christian coinages of 2nd century Gnosticism. So this idea of kind of what I understand without reading everything he said is that in Judaism, there was, of course, some that didn't believe in the resurrection. But those who did not ever see themselves as like going to heaven when they die. And neither do the believers in the early congregations, the early believers, according to some of the things I've read. So, in light of what you have taught about in John 5:19 and following about the resurrection, and I know we've talked about this before, but I still can't get clarity on this. Let me see if there's something else. Okay, so the idea of paradise, that seems to be something that was considered not like purgatory, but it kind of sounds like purgatory to me. a place where those who were in Messiah, those who were believers, those who followed Yahweh and whatever before Yeshua, then they, like what Yeshua said, today you'll be with me in paradise, he said to the other person, on the thief on the stake. So I guess I don't really, okay, let me read this part to you. To begin with, then, I'm talking about like early believers. The early future hope centered firmly on resurrection. The first believers did not simply believe in life after death. They virtually never spoke simply of going to heaven when they died. When they did speak of heaven as the post-mortem destination, they seemed to regard this heavenly life as a temporary stage on the way to the eventual resurrection of the body. And he references
my opinion?
Okay.
What they taught was that in the earth there was a space. Heaven sometimes ought to be considered just a space. In Enoch, there are lots of spaces in lots of places. But the place was Hades. And Hades was divided into two sections.
You mean Hades, like the Greek underworld?
Yes.
I just talked about this.
Let me finish what I'm saying. That Hades was divided into two sections. One section was for the souls of the dead to be tormented, and the other section was paradise, and that Jesus was there in Hades, in paradise. So that was a concept that is still believed by some people. I found that actually in a denominational handbook. I think it was Presbyterian, that question was asked, and the writer of the book said this exact same thing. And I have seen this in other texts as well for early believers. Joshua talks about Gehenna. Well, Gehenna supposedly had a tunnel that went down to Hades. Okay, that's why he says you be on the trash heap. He may be saying that he's going down the pit of Hades from Gehenna, because there was a passageway there. Ghosts could come out of it. I can only tell you my belief in this. Usually N.T. Wright, he's a real good apologist, but also, when I say apologist, he's an apologist for status quo, the mainstream Christianity. He stays within those boundaries. I don't believe in life after death. I believe that when a person dies, like the scripture says, they're dead. They are dead, except those who have been converted. That's why it's called the new birth.
So can I interrupt for a second? Because that's what we've talked about before. Those that are in Messiah, I think in John it says they'll never die. They'll go right into life. And so that's what I'm trying to understand then is, what about like the final resurrection where everybody talks about in John 5? What about the bodily resurrection of everybody? Does that happen to believers, or what is their state if haven't been physically resurrected and all of their DNA come back together with a codified body? Then what is their state? Are they not they're not dead in the grave like those that died without Messiah? I know you've talked about different dimensions, and that's where I get off.
If you have the new birth, if you are born again, then you receive your spirit. You don't have any as a normal person. They don't have any spirit. When you are converted, you become like Yeshua when your body passes away. Remember, Yeshua was able...
But Yeshua rose bodily. It was a bodily resurrection, so...
Yes, but so are the ones that die in Messiah. It's a bodily resurrection. It's just, as Paul says, a different kind of body. And where are those people? They have, like Joshua, walking through walls. A body can't do that. Walking through doors, disappearing. In the story about Emmaus says he just disappeared. So a fourth dimensional being, which has been described by the guy that wrote The Cosmos, what's his name? The astrophysicist and heathen?
Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan did a good job in explaining this in his book Cosmos. Those people are able to go through walls when they manifest in 3 dimensions, which they do quite often manifest in 3 dimensions. But the point is for them, or the prime directive, they are working here on Earth, but their prime directive at this time is not to be seen.
So you think that the space that they're in is on the Earth?
I think it's
Yahweh space.
It's on the Earth in the 4th dimension, and probably more dimensions. Now, it's the 4th dimension is a concept that you can understand if you delve into it more, but you can't experience it now because you don't have the perception to experience. You don't have the eyes to see into that, the ears to hear into that. Some people seem to, those that get hit on the head or have some kind of brain accident, they do, like Yvonne here, the late Yvonne, she died, and she saw these things clearly, but they weren't resurrected people. She saw them as interfering with her life. She saw them as disguised human beings that would also be able to disappear. And this phenomenon is spoke of everywhere, of people that have the ability to see these things and discern these things. It's just like sometimes when you have discerning of spirit, you can feel their presence there. You can feel their presence. Jesus just doesn't go everywhere. You can't go everywhere at once. You can't even do that in the 4th dimension. You can go maybe 2 places at once, but he has his emissaries. They're not angels. When they come, they're disguised. You just can't see them. However, we work on a timeline from the past to the present to the future. It's left to right. In the economy of 4 dimensions, that left to right timeline is turned, how many degrees is that? 45 degrees. So it's not left 90 degrees. It's not left to right anymore. It's all at the same time. Although in the spirit, you're able to visit other times because it's all going on at once. The resurrection, in this particular way of thinking, has already happened. People have already come out from the graves, been reconstructed, and they are here. But they're not here in the dimension that we can see. We don't really know what they do there. This is a lot of speculation, but it makes every bit of sense. They can appear, and they do appear at certain times. Like my mother sees Aunt Myrtle here and there, and I don't doubt her a bit. Whenever my mother seems to be in trauma, Aunt Myrtle appears. My mother does not concoct this stuff, nor does she fantasize. This is something.
You said it happens when she's in trauma, so you don't think there's something chemical happening in the brain?
Well, when I say in trauma, I'm meaning in problems in this world, where she grieves about her dead husband, or has a financial need, or is being persecuted for some reason, or has problems with her family. Aunt Myrtle comes, she sits in the chair, she's got her glasses on. She's come out of the 4th dimension into the 3rd dimension. Those people can move into the 3rd dimension, just like you are in 3 dimensions, but you're also in 2 dimensions and 1 dimension, which Flatlands tries to discuss and tries to help you understand. But you can't see them right now, but you can see their work. Their work.
So they know what's going on?
Yes. Yeah. They're alive. They're alive. They are alive. Your mother's alive. My father's alive. They were converted, and they are working in the millennium. Or, from our perspective, they are working to begin the millennium, when they will be seen, and they will appear, and they will be working in bodily form with human beings here to convert this world. It's not time yet, because we look at, well, again, to Barnabas, he tells us what time everything starts. And how could he be able to view the future in 2,000 years? He must have got a message from Yahweh about this to tell when, because he's talking about our time. But exactly 2,000 years would be in another 50, 60 years, if it's 2,000 years exactly. I won't be around to see it. You probably won't be around to see it, but somebody will be around to see it. We need to talk more at some time about Yeshua's resurrection and the people that were resurrected with him. We'll do that some other time. So
what about like Lazarus?
Lazarus?
That was Mary and Martha's brother that was dead. I mean, he wouldn't go. There has to be wouldn't there have to be something in between death and immediate resurrected body?
When you die, you go into a kind of a swoon if you're conscious, of course. People have near-death experiences, and they see things that are real or aren't real. Some of them are able to tell what was going on in the room or what was going on in the next room. So evidently, close to death. I know when I was close to death that time, really close, the EMTs pronounced me dead, but I wasn't dead. I was feeling great while I was having a heart attack, and they got the gurney stuck in the door, couldn't get out, so it was delayed there to get me any kind of resuscitation. And I felt like so many other people do in stage 1 near-death experience. And that is, when they tell you you're dying, you think, is this what it's like? And I felt perfectly comfortable with that. And I think that this is because these chemicals shoot in your brain, or because you're getting ready to go. So there is a state between life and death, but if you're converted, look, you don't have to worry about it. You are going someplace. You are not dying. Your body's just falling off. That's why you're born of spirit, and that spirit grows within you as you get older. Hopefully, if you do your study and you are devoted and you love Elohim and understand and teach the message of Yeshua, you grow in spirit. Now, people say that just got converted and they die, their spirit becomes a babe. Somebody has to take care of. As far as, here's another thing.
So, like, their glorified body is in their youth?
Yeah, in their youth. We would see them as a babe, but they would also have the ability to transform themselves, as Carl Sagan says, into anything they wanted to. Walk through walls or kill you in an instant. He said they would be able to turn you inside out on a whim. But see, the reason they don't is because Elohim prohibits that. They're not allowed to do, the evil ones are not allowed to do that, but there are evil ones there too. They're in a fourth dimension as well. So we don't really understand that, but they are called demons or fallen angels or ghosts. Ghosts are nothing but demons masquerading as the person that they were in or somebody they knew, because they know all these facts about it and everything. And they come back with that same kind of look, but they're demons that people see. So that's what I understand. A fourth dimensional place that may be part of it is like old Jewish thought is. Part of it is for sinners, and the other part is for saints. Instead of saying it's Hades in the earth, we could say that it's a fourth dimensional reality.
Okay, so something else he quotes is in Second Maccabees 7, that talking about the sort of body that the resurrected will have, that, when the 7 brothers were martyred before their mother, they assume it will be a body pretty much like the present one.
Mm-hmm.
But then he says most of the Jewish texts that glance at that question have little to say beyond this, apart from occasional references to glory, perhaps in the sense of light. But then in Christianity, early Christianity, it kind of morphed into the belief in the resurrection that then about the new body, though it will certainly be a body. It's in the sense of a physical object occupying space and time, but it will be a transformed body whose material created from the old material will have new properties.
The explanation, again, is found, it's very succinct, in Paul. It's one of the reasons we need Paul.
15.
That's exactly right. If you read that closely, and it doesn't say, he says a physical body and a spiritual body, right? It does not say that in the actual text. In fact, I wish I had the authentic letters of Paul with me. H.T. Anderson correctly translated it, and he got thrown out of the church. Let me go get it.
Okay.
Let me go get it.
Well, he talks about that here. I'll read that while you're doing that.
Okay.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
So, as far as Paul's concerned in 1 Corinthians 15, he speaks of two sorts of body, the present one and the future one. He uses two key adjectives to describe these two bodies. Unfortunately, many translations get him radically wrong at this point.
Yes.
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 He says it leads to the widespread supposition that for Paul, the new body would be a spiritual body in the sense of a non-material body, but a body that is in Yeshua's case wouldn't have left an empty tomb behind it. It can be demonstrated in great detail philologically and exegetically, but this is precisely not what Paul meant. The contrast he is making is not between what we would mean by a present physical body and what we would mean by a future spiritual one, but between a present body animated by the normal human soul and a future body animated by Yah's spirit. Understanding
that the soul is not an eternal soul. The soul in Jewish thought is nefesh. It's just part of you. Mind, for instance, that dies too when the unsaved dies. Now let me see. This is 1 Corinthians 15:40, and I think this is it. It says in this translation of the Jesus Seminar, there are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the splendor of the heavenly is of one kind, and the splendor of the earthly is of a different kind. The splendor of the sun, etc., etc. So the dead will come to life like this, sown in corruption, raised incorruptible. Now, where is that part that talks about the two different kinds? That's usually translated physical and spiritual. Do you see that?
Yeah, it's verse 44. Keep going.
44. All right. Sown with a body fit for earthly life, they are raised with a body fit for life in Elohim's new world.
So this, my version says it is sown a physical body and raised a spiritual body.
That's not correct.
What does yours say?
He explains it here. I learned this when I was working with the H.T. Anderson version of the Sinaiticus, and I read this chapter in Greek, and I thought, that's not what it says. Let me see if I can find it.
So it's basically different words for physical body and spiritual body?
It actually says psychical body.
What's that mean?
Psyche is the mind. Psyche is what we would call the soul. All souls die, but the people that are converted, they retain that in their conversion. Psychical body, that's what it says. A natural body, a psychical body. I guess I would need to go get my Greek Testament. I can't find it in here, but I know this guy explains it.
So what if that's the what physical body means, what would be the proper translation for spiritual body?
I think that see if one more minute.
I really wish I could get this straight.
All right, here we go. 1544, a body fit for earthly life. The phrase soma psychikon. I would call that in English a psychical body. Soma, body. Psychikon. It doesn't mean a physical body. The sense of this phrase includes both the body and the life breath that animates the body. Unlike Neoplatonists, Paul does not see the body's animating force as immortal in itself.
Okay.
So that fills in, instead of the physical body, it's the psychical body, and then the spiritual body. I don't have a Greek Testament right here.
It goes on in verse 45 and talks about Adam becoming a living being,
Mm-hmm.
and the last Adam being a life-giving spirit.
Take a look at back in the time of Adam. It talks about the breath, and that is nephesh again. And the breath was blown into Adam. And when he got kicked out of the garden, he lost his spirit. He lost the spiritual reality, because in the garden, he was in paradise. It was in a fourth dimensional place that we can only understand if it's put in three-dimensional terms. So he leaves there spiritless and doesn't know where to go, and there's already big cities and everything around there that he goes wandering off to, now fully physical body. And all his progeny after that did not have that spirit of life anymore, that nephesh. They were spiritless humans. There is a question about what about in the genetic makeup of Adam and Eve? Wasn't there some kind of genetic or some kind of field within them that they would pass down that would give some people, random people, the ability to be devoted from the first of their life? That would be, some genetic combination of two dominants, a dominant from the mother, a dominant from the father, that would pop up as a person that had the propensity to be born of spirit right away. I think this is what happened to me. I think I was one of those people.
It doesn't happen to all the siblings, though, necessarily, right?
No, it does not. It's random. And you hear about people who have siblings that aren't believers and they're hell raisers and everything else. They don't get it because you're getting, you don't understand a genetic concept of how you would get a dominant from both for this particular gene, probably down there on the tails of the genes, that or people think that, these are just trash down here. You'll find out different one of these days. But, to get any trait to express itself in the phenotype, you have to have a certain exact combination of genes turning on. And I think that for some people, I think you, for sure, these genes came up and you turned on and your mind accepted this because you've been a believer all your life and devoted. Now you're very devoted to prayer, and I'm devoted to writing. So what we have here are different gifts and talents and abilities among these people, whereas the remnant of the world, a much, much bigger portion of people, they don't get this. That they can get it, there's one way to get it, and that is through conversion. They've got to break themselves down, and they've got to receive. They have to receive. It's like Wesley said, he preached for 10 years with no luck, and then all of a sudden he felt the Spirit come into him, actually grow in him at, the age of about 40. And we see this a lot with siblings. Somebody will get it, somebody won't. Whole families.
And you see just the opposite, too, where people, I was reading about a musician raised in the church and sang Christian songs all his life, and he didn't really enjoy it. And he's like in his 30s or something, and he's like, I didn't believe it. He never was converted.
Mm-hmm. And what happened to him? Did he get converted?
Yes. No, he left. He's gone.
He just got the opportunity. He had the opportunity to play. Years ago, I met Ray Boltz, and we had a nice talk, and he was a very gentle person, very devoted. But what happened to him? Now, I think that you can lose your salvation. People say, we kill baby Christians. People can lose this if they follow their mind, if they allow the devil to come into their mind to express characteristics that are in common with the devil. That's what I was talking about psychopaths today. The doctors, I read a lot into this and I listened a lot, and I'm reading a book right now about a cure for psychopathy. In the book, this is good. In the book, they found a cure for this, and they used a spray to get it out. They put out gobs and gobs of bottles of a spray. So you take this spray, and all of a sudden, that place that was missing in the brain pops out. These people, for the first time, have empathy.
Kind of spray?
A perfume.
So it's an olfactory thing that
yeah, because the nerve there, and they go to airports and where people are, a lot of people, and just spray perfume around. And if anybody says anything, they say, "Well, don't you like the scent of it?" And then they get a whiff of it, and immediately that part of the brain pops out, and they start crying and everything else. They've never had empathy before, and so, but. What happens is they decided not to do it, I think, at the end, because what would happen is you would lose the leaders of your world, because when they would turn to empathy, that would be the end of their leadership ability. And in this novel, they mentioned...
It's a novel?
Yes. It's called The Cure. It's got a lot of facts in it, and it's very entertaining. I'm reading all of this guy's work right now, all novels, but very close to home.
Right.
And what was I going to say? In the book, they point out one episode of the old Star Trek that they say everybody needs to see this to understand. And what was it called? I can remember what it was about, and I've seen that episode several times, and it is. Because what happens is Captain Kirk, somehow, when he comes back in the transporter, there's two of them. One of them is the empathic Kirk. One of them is the leader Kirk. The leader Kirk is evil, completely evil. And the empathic Kirk, he can't make a decision. So what these guys get is the empathic Kirk, who can't give an order, crying all the time, worrying about people's health and stuff, and they say, "You've got to give us some orders here." He said, I can't. And then they discover the other one, meaner than a snake, drunk all the time, raping women, doing all that stuff, but with leadership ability. He still was able to command the ship. So what their point was is to run these two again through the what do you call that thing? Transporter, run them through the transporter, and bring them back as one. Neither one of them wanted to do that. It was easy to convince the empathic Kirk to do it, although he was very upset. He's going to lose his part of himself, because in the show, he's not that empathic. Sometimes he is. But the other Kirk had to be tied up and chained to get him to go back into the transporter. And when it happens, they come together. And they get the captain back. It's a great episode, like so many others of their episodes. But they talk about that in the book, and they're concerned about if you heal these people with the brain problem, then your leaders are all going to be crying and sending roses and doing things, kind of like Trump did. I think Trump used his empathic side a lot. Although I think Trump, pretty close to a sociopath. I think Biden, very close to being a sociopath. Probably on the sociopath test, they probably get enough marks that they would be called by a doctor a sociopath. Psychopath, sociopath, both the same thing. They say, different levels. Yeah, sociopath doesn't cause any trouble.
Right.
Psychopath does. They're artificial. That's an artificial division. But still, they use that to better understand the psychopathy of these people.
So how do we tie that back into, I forgot how we ended up there about, I guess, the body, the physical body and the spiritual body. Is that how we ended up there?
If you don't have the physical body, you don't have the innate desire to sin anymore. You have your soul, which is your mind, your nefesh. Your mind is not changed. What is changed, because your body becomes spiritual, which we really don't know what that means, you have a completely different viewpoint on the world and what your mission is, and a new dedication, because you have found out that indeed you will never die. You get happy, 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 rejoice. Some people say, if I get to heaven, I will praise him for 1,000 years. So, you know,
do you think that when the believers that are in that state and they're in the fourth dimension and they're moving about, are they still learning, or are they becoming like Yeshua immediately, that they have to learn? I had a dream about this. It was a marvelous dream. And what the dream was about is that Earth was going on, and up above the Earth was a land, almost like the Emerald City. And then inside there, I got to look inside and walk around a little bit, and the saints were in there. And they went to classes. They went to classes before they went down to earth to fulfill their ministries. Some of them didn't go. They were not in a state yet or grown up enough in spirit to go. They had to be nurtured still. They had to be taught before they could be let loose. Some infants, for instance. I think that there's a special dispensation for infants, especially aborted infants. I think there's a special dispensation to get them up there to populate their world. Now, you can call it heaven, except the word heaven is so full of dogma and mythology.
Yeah, all this time it's just has accretions of people's ideas and thoughts, to the point now where people think, oh, I'm going up to heaven. They can't tell you where heaven is. One church tells you it's on a planet someplace. Two churches, Scientology tells you that too, Mormonism. It's on a different planet. They can't describe where it is, and I'm describing where it is. I like to tell more people. That's why I wanted to record this little talk. See, in the chance we might get into this a little bit. What do you think? Do you think that makes sense to you? It does to me.
I don't know. It's still really foggy for me to imagine that. But because I guess, like you said, the dimensions and understanding, instead of the linear time, it's basically vertical.
Yes.
But I just, when people, I don't know, I guess as you get older and people are passing away and they're thinking about their loved ones and those that were, believers, and kind of they want to know what they're doing, and,
Of course.
So to differentiate between, and then at the end of Revelation, it talks about like the resurrection, like it's this one event that takes place, at the closing of the age.
And we just don't know if everything's happening at once. We just don't know if those people who are resurrected have actually come back to earth. They are disguised for right now. They could take bodily form.
How could you tell someone that? Like, I mean, would you just say it's conjecture? I can't prove this. This is just what I think.
It's conjecture, of course it is, but it's learned conjecture. It's logical conjecture. But you have to have a little bit of an understanding about what's the rage these days, multi-dimensionality. It's the rage. There's no doubt in my mind that there is extended life in another dimension. Now, what my spirit feels, or my body feels, I guess, I feel like I believe that there is nothing after death. That's what I believe. There is nothing. But I have a great hope that there is. I don't believe that there is. I believe everybody just dies and that's the end. But I have a great hope because I don't have any more evidence than what I have found out myself.
You don't think there's enough from what we've already talked about in the scriptures for those that are in Yahweh and Messiah that there definitely is?
I don't believe in the scriptures, but I have hope that there is, according to the scriptures.
Yes, you do believe in the scriptures. I know that you study them out and you see where there's interpolations and things, but
that's my passion. But still, it seems like, again, like mythology to me. But what's the difference between hope and belief? There's also the matter of faith, confidence, trust, that we should use the word confidence whenever we see pistis, where it is translated wrongly as faith. We should read that as confidence, because all we talk about when we talk about faith is confidence in Messiah. I have great confidence in Messiah. I believe Jesus is alive. I believe that his work is intersecting the universe right now. I believe that the grace of Elohim encircles the earth like a vapor. That's prevenient grace, it's called. I believe those things. But to read the scripture and find so many errors in it, my whole mission in my life since childhood has to try to find out the truth of these claims. And I have gone in my life about as far as I can. But I have hope. I have confidence in Yahshua. I don't have much belief. That doesn't mean I'm not saved or I'm not spiritual or anything like that. That's simply the kind of skeptic that I am. I was made to be a skeptic, born again to be a skeptic, born again to do what I'm doing. And this is what I do. And so I exegete these scriptures best as I can. I've spent a lot of money to go in and learn how to do these things in college and seminary and higher education, just like you went in and got a master's degree in teaching, the gifted, right?
Yeah. Well, certificate.
A certificate. Okay. That's what I did, because that's all that I was concerned about.
And you obviously, because of the ministry you have, don't want to just know it for yourself, but you want to try to let other people know. And I'm not on the same level, but I do want to be able to articulate to others. And
you need an example. You need to find a visual example of this idea of dimensionality, and you can get them on YouTube. Lots and lots and lots of good programs on this subject on YouTube. And there are a lot of astrophysicists saying much more than that. They talk about multiple universes and people showing up in multiple universes, like you've got a doppelganger on another planet, in some dimension, and then you got another one over here, and never the twain shall meet.
It would be helpful to have sort of the basic introduction for somebody that doesn't have that scientific background and understanding that you could, because it gets to the point where I just stop thinking about it after a while until it comes up again. Someone asks a question, someone passes away, and I don't want to say, how I am. I don't want to say anything that's not true, even if it brings comfort. I don't want to.
You mean somebody that was converted dies, or somebody that was?
Well, it's much easier if somebody that's not converted. Yeah. It's usually somebody that was. Yeah.
I tell people when they're not converted, often when I was doing pastoral work, people would talk about their loved ones, especially the younger ones that had died. And, of course, they had been steeped in the mythological idea of hell. And I have had times when women have come up to me about husbands or sons. They say, I just can't think of him burning forever in hell. It's horrible. It's horrible. And my answer to that, well, honey, I got good news for you. Trust in Yahshua. He'll sort them out. There'll be a resurrection of the dead, and at that time, we'll see what happens. Trust Yahshua in this matter.
I feel confident about that. understanding.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard you talk about that for 15
Sure.
years or so. And so it takes me a while to sort through things, but I do understand that. I just still get foggy on, the difference between the believer, and we've already said this, we're reiterating, the believer, what happens to them because they don't die, and what are they doing?
Are you having a spirit in you? Do you feel your spirit? It's not the Holy Spirit that comes in and lives with you. That's impossible.
I know my spirit's alive because I've got when I was praying, and I'll start now, that it's like, what is going on? I'm just reading nothing in particular, and I just feel it's a feeling, which people might say you can't trust your feelings, but there's no other reason than there's something going on in my spirit.
Absolutely. I get that too. I just got it a little bit ago. Just a feeling of knowing that there's another part in you rejoicing here. Okay? People don't have that. What they have instead is some demon usually, and they have to get that out. That's why Peter in the Nazarene Acts had to have everybody exorcised before they were baptized. They had to get that stuff out of them, including what they ate. 3 days, get it through your guts and out before you can even get your exorcism, then on to baptism. We don't do that today. I want to think that all the people in the church, there were 60 people there, even because of COVID last Sunday. They're nice people. They're fine people. They're decent people. And I've had them sneak up to me and ask me about hell. And I taught that Sunday school class for them for a while, and I got about 4 Sundays before I was kicked out. And they heard these things during those 4 Sundays. And they're still sneaking back. Just happened again last week. Somebody snuck back over there. I'm at the keyboard, and they're asking me about this. So it's liberating. It's liberating. And can this be any more unbelievable than a person going in and burning forever? That's not logical to me. That's never been proven. That's a myth. But multi-dimensionality is not a myth. Or fields. What's the name of those fields? My memory is going.
Like energetic fields, like
resonance, morphic fields. If you study into morphic fields and study a little bit about these dimensions, just enough to realize that you can have 5, 10, 15 different populations right here on Earth. They can't see each other.
Yeah, so my brain explodes when I start thinking about that.
Well, okay, you don't have to. But I would suggest that you go and learn about morphic fields, because that makes every bit of sense to me. Morphic resonance, and a little more about dimensionality.
Okay.
I get a book. I probably have a book in here on it that I haven't read. If I haven't sold them, I might have 1 or 2 left. Let me look at them and see. I know you read books.
Yeah, so you think that idea in Scripture just is wrong, that there is like one resurrection of the dead? I mean, I know we talk about the classes of resurrection, but
it's called the general resurrection. The bulk of people will be resurrected. Do you think that they can judge 7 billion people at the same time, especially if you're going to be a judge?
This is what I would like to be able to speak about with better understanding, because I do see it as more practical, not poof. This is, this is just poof. Happen like that. I see it.
Yeah. Well, look, there is a day of judgment. That day is 1,000 years. The millennium that we're promised begins, if you want to call it that, begins that day. There was a day of judgment in the 1st century. There was a rapture in the 1st century. Now, if we can trust the prophecies of Barnabas, and a couple others say pretty much the same thing, we are approaching the time when the day starts. And
so that rapture in the 1st century is probably another topic, but do you get that from Josephus?
There's evidence there, yes, but I primarily get that from wondering if there was a rapture at that time, why don't these church fathers talk about it? It's like in the book of Mark, Gospel of Mark, Yeshua tells everybody, don't tell anybody who I am. Don't exalt me. He's a secret Messiah, the messianic secret. In Mark gets that. It's the early gospel, the one closest to him. There's a messianic secret. The same thing with the millennium and the day of judgment, also called the day of the Lord. There's a secret here, and you can only unravel the secret if you know the keys to it, to understand it. And I think, just like you said, it's going to be during that 1,000 years or some extended time period that they're going to start coming back. I think this is what I've been telling people all along, that they'll come back gradually over that day, and at that time they will be integrated into the earth, and then when they're done, they're going to do the good and they're going to do the evil. Now, I think there's going to be 2 different times for them. I don't know which they're going to do first, the good or the evil. I'm thinking the good because there won't be that many of them. So they'll have the good on board on the earth and then adjudicate the evil ones, send the ones to the pit where they'll die a second death. You can't have a second death unless you have a first death. And we can't call what happens to people death if they don't die, if they're ghosts. If they're, okay?
Right.
Okay. I think this would be a good recording.
Yeah.
You're a very good investigator.
It's just a matter of trying to sort through it. I guess, there's so many questions, though, that people have that you can't just answer in 5 minutes.
Okay, look, I know it. You can't do it. People expect a quick answer. And what I tell them is, how are you going to count the angels on the head of a pin? You can't do this in 5 minutes, but they expect that quick answer.
Yeah.
There is no quick answer because of the orientation that the people already have about this particular subject. And as I said before, everybody on the earth is an expert in divinity, in theology. They all think they're experts. So we need to educate, and one way you could get this better in your head is to do your next talk on this.
It would probably take me a year.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. If you just do enough to make
I feel
them...
like you've already done so much about this, though, yourself. I don't know if there's anything new I could...
We got different people all along, and they don't want to hear it just from me. They're sick of hearing me. If I had some more preachers there, they wouldn't have to hear from me so often. So think about that. I can send you an outline. I can make up an outline, but I'd rather you just do it because your presentation are as close to perfect as I've ever heard for what you do.
I feel like I'm mostly sharing what I've learned from other people, but I guess a lot of people do that. There's not a whole lot that's new under the sun. That's
not theirs anymore. That's yours.
Yeah.
Once you learn it, that is yours. It's not theirs anymore.
So I've been thinking about that as far as the presentations go, because something I've read said that, like in, ancient Judaism, you had, maybe the leader who would read scripture and facilitate a discussion. It's really, I almost feel like it's a church thing that we feel like we have to have one person give a message.
Mm-hmm.
While at the same time, on the other side of that is if you do a discussion, which on Sabbath, it would have to have some parameters built in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many people that come on Shabbat want to even speak, but I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about. If we could gravitate more toward discussion and talking about.
Well, in the early days, they didn't have preachers. The preachers went out and preached out on the street. In the services built around the communion. They might get a little homily before the communion, like you did today from the Didache. They might get something like that, but the service is built around the Eucharist, and that's one thing that the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church and the Episcopal Church have kept. That's one of the reasons I like to go there. I like it.
We're going to start doing it just one Shabbat a month, right?
See how it works out, see how they like it. Yeah, so we'll just have a short little homily from somebody, and then we'll go into the full service. I mean all of it, the epiclesis and everything else, and see what happens. Or would it be better to put their toe in the water with the service from the Didache, which has really no spiritual content at all? It's Ebionite.
I don't know. That's your call.
Thinking about putting them together to get both sides of it.
I think that would be good. I know that, that sounds like something I would like. And I think that people, I don't know most of the people that are on now, but
I know them all. I talk to them all.
There.
Thanks for listening to a pretty bad recording due to recording with a microphone over Messenger phone service. But I hope you got something out of that. If you have questions or comments, let us know. www.yahad.me. That's my contact form. It's also the form you can use to get free stuff. So when you go out there, make sure to check the free stuff you might want that we have. And in the comments field, put in there what you think about our endeavors here at Vero Essene Yahad to provide Torah-centric higher learning, primarily for post-church, post-Hebrew roots people. Yahweh bless you. Amen.